Hello, my name is Tom Cooney and I am Professor of Entrepreneurship at TU Dublin. And with me for this interview is Padraig Staunton, who's a former student, and delighted to welcome back to what is now TU Dublin. But when you were with us a long time ago, it was COMAD, which, to explain to current students, was the College of Marketing and Design, which was in Mountjoy Square, which then became part of Dublin Institute of Technology, which has then become part of TU Dublin. So we've been through a long journey since you were with us. Today is about your journey. Talk to us first of all about your time at COMAD and how you enjoyed it, how you reflect on it.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I guess it was a very unique place, COMAD, as you well know, and now you have contrast. I think it was a very special place, and it was very small. It was one site of the many DIT sites at the time, and you literally got to know everybody in the college, and that's not an understatement. You got to know every single person, mostly by name, definitely by face, and you got to know every lecturer. So it was very unique in that respect, and I think that really added, to the whole experience. You could go deep. You could go deep with the club and society, with the people you met, because you'd see them again. It wasn't fleeting passing in a massive campus, and I'm sure large campuses and small campuses have their advantages, but I think in COMAD there was a unique intimacy where it allowed everybody to get to know each other from different backgrounds, but also studying different courses. Like, as you said, it was a College of Marketing and Design, so you had people from fine art to people studying business administration who ordinarily maybe in life would have had nothing in common, but we all met around a plate of curry chips in the canteen because there was only the one canteen and mostly only curry chips.
Yeah, I remember as well. Was there anything bad about everybody knowing you and every teacher,
of course,
every lecturer knowing you?
Of course. I mean, the obvious. on a Thursday morning after a big night out in the big tree, it wasn't as positive knowing everybody. But no, mostly. I mean, look, it was like an extension almost of secondary school, except you're meeting loads of new people from all over the show, and with opportunities to get involved in clubs and societies and travel and do all sorts of stuff that you couldn't do in a secondary school environment.
If I recall correctly, you were involved in the Students' Union quite heavily.
Yeah. So I don't really know where that came from, but I've no political aspirations or political activism in my blood, but I think it was just to be involved and have fun and represent people. So the opportunity arose early enough, and actually I went after first year for the vice president of the Students' Union and was successful in my election campaign, and took a year's sabbatical then. So actually that's a year paid out of studies to work in the office in the Students' Union as a representative of the students. So it was a baptism of fire, because it was very early, and I didn't expect to win it. Quite frankly, it was just a bit of fun, and that turned into something quite, I suppose, definitely character forming. There's some really interesting and high level work happens within the student unions locally and nationally, which I hadn't sort of anticipated, but it was an amazing experience. And that was as far as I wanted to go. I did a year. I didn't, I wasn't going to be a career politician. It wasn't something that that I'd be attracted to. It isn't something I'd be attracted to at all.
But what I suppose struck me was, at the time, is that I always saw you as kind of a dynamic type person, as someone who liked to make things happen, and the Students' Union activity just allowed you to express yourself in a particular way, right? That there was doing good for others, which I know is part of your makeup, but that kind of, that sense of entrepreneurial spirit seemed to be in you. Do you think that entrepreneurial spirit got fostered in COMAD, or was it enhanced in any great way at that time?
Yeah, I'd say it was enhanced for sure, but it was definitely in me, and like I'd say, it goes right back to, and it's probably a mixture of nature and nurture, but it goes back to when I was like a very small kid. My granddad had a number of businesses through his life. He owned a dance hall back in the 50s, 60s and that, and then he had other retail businesses and a petrol station and stuff like that. But by the time I was a young kid, he probably only had left, he was an older man, and he only had the petrol pumps in a small village in Galway, and I'd go spend my whole summer because I wanted to work and learn about the business and how it works, and how much you buy a can of oil for and how much you sell it for, and the difference is the bit in the middle, and it's called profit. And when you're speaking that language at 9 years of age,
okay,
yeah,
young.
and then like I went on to further summer work in my uncle's pub in Westport, and that became even more exciting because you're mixing with lots of people in a social environment, and you're learning how to deal with different characters at different stages of their day. And I think there was invaluable lessons then. I even started a little business where people would come to climb Crowpatrick, and myself and my cousin would buy in the wholesalers cans of Coke and Rock Shandy at this price, bring them and set up a stall beside the pub and sell our own stuff. And I suppose that spirit was always there. I remember the one summer we took all of our savings, everything we had, was about £5, bought as many as we could for Reek Sunday, brought them out the front. It spilled rain all day and we didn't sell a single can. So we drank Rock Shandy for about 2 years. It was a valuable lesson. But yeah, I just went to work in the hotels when I was in college, and in bars and stuff like that. And I think that's what helps you on your journey if it's in you. So if the nature bit is there, I think if it's nurtured through early exposure, then it all comes together in some sort of a.
And what I do remember about your time as well is that it was relatively early days for us in terms of developing entrepreneurship programs, because we kind of started doing that from the mid-90s onwards, from when you would have been there, just having just arrived. I'm just wondering, we were in early days, you're talking about the nurturing bit. Do you think we did anything through formal coursework to kind of help that nurturing, or did your entrepreneurial learning kind of get enhanced outside of the classroom?
Yeah, so I think there's two things there. The format of the college being so small and intimate, and so almost everything you did was quite entrepreneurial, or was less formal in many ways, seat of the pants and get stuff done. And whether that was fundraising, whether that was in the business society, whether that was in the students' union itself. But then on the formal side, the course that absolutely stood out for me was the enterprise course, which was business development and enterprise, which was basically entrepreneurship in a classroom setting. Now, I was cynical when I started. I was like, how can someone teach entrepreneurship, and if the particular lecturer hasn't got the life experience in that space? And that was that was cynicism. And then I loved it, and it without a doubt it was the subject that I scored highest in consistently, and one that probably helped me get a decent score, because it was like way above, and it was consistently scoring high in that, so that there was something about it that attracted me. But it put a great shape on it, everything from funding and finance to getting people in from the real world, which I suppose in many ways I'm that person now, and it was invaluable to hear stories, because they inspire you to drive on and know that it's actually possible, and that these entrepreneurs, in inverted commas, who are out there were just kids once, and were just students once, and then they came up with their concept or idea for.
And
you
would have had to do a business plan, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, we did business plans, and we did a lot of presentations. I remember as well, which would frighten the daylights out of us.
Because we used to do a lot of case studies.
Yeah, case studies, and present back the case studies, and I loved that, because you were applying a lot of the stuff that was out there in your mind, like in the ether and in your mind from your experience, whether that was from selling petrol and oil at 8 or 9 and cans of Rock Shandy at 10 and 11, but how you had navigated the business world up to that, we were able to apply it to the case studies, and it made it real.
What's really interesting actually is kind of as we reflect back is how different entrepreneurship education is now compared to then, right? But at the same time, the basics are the same, right? It's still about, identifying an opportunity. It's still about, finding something that people want. It's about buying and selling at a profit. Okay, the basics remain the same. The teaching might change, right?
Yeah.
But the basics of business remain the same. Can I ask you, how would you define the word entrepreneur, or how do you interpret it?
I reckon it's somebody who has an idea or concept to bring to the world that can add value. So that value doesn't have to be monetary value, and particularly I think in many cases it's not. So you get social entrepreneurs, you get technology entrepreneurs who will never turn a penny, but it's about bringing value, and that value could be jobs, it could be social impact, but I think a lot of the time it's self fulfillment, so it's weirdly, and I learned about Maslow early doors in DIT, but weirdly it's a part of that self-actualization journey that Maslow talks about, which I think entrepreneurs with maybe the 50% nature nurture have maybe an over desire to fulfill, to go up the self-actualization curve in a certain route, which is via entrepreneurship. So it's bringing that value, so they feel they've achieved, and it doesn't have to be just money. And personally, like, I've done quite a bit, and rarely, there are metrics, and they're very important metrics, but rarely are the one that I feel, now I've had success here. It's rarely monetary. It's I've built a business, I've brought value to people's lives, I've employed 20-25 people whose rent and mortgages are met by the business that I created. The tax that I have contributed to the economy helps this country go forward, and so on, like that.
Because it's interesting you say that. I know quite a few really successful entrepreneurs, and I would say money is not the driving factor. I think money is used to keep score.
Yeah.
Okay. No, everyone needs to make an income, put food on the table, but that's not what drives them, right? And that's the point you're making as well.
Yeah.
Would you call yourself an entrepreneur? Would you?
I would. Yeah. I know there's maybe even a stigma in Ireland, or maybe there was once upon a time, where it was very American.
Yeah.
And I think, what are you? I'm an entrepreneur. It's people didn't necessarily like the idea of that, or warm to it. I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm an entrepreneur, and I definitely would subscribe to it.
And certainly when you were a student, that would have been the notion, but I think thankfully in the years since, and I think the likes of the Entrepreneur of the Year award and all that kind of has helped to change
definitely,
that, where it's now seen as a valuable career option. And talk to us about your entrepreneurial career.
So
take us through the journey where it all started for you.
I guess one thing that's common to kind of the three businesses I've been involved in or started is they tend to be just ahead of the curve, look for a macro trend, and then hone in on something micro within that. So I suppose the first one was just finished up in college in DIT in Mountjoy Square, and headed to the States for J1 immediately afterwards, and eyes wide open, ready to find the idea in the States and bring it back and all of that. And so the internet had literally just come out, like had been, I suppose, available to the public, and there was traction in the States with a couple of like on-campus portals where students could go and share stuff, really like online magazines. That's what they were for, but they were per campus by campus. This is 1999, the summer, right, by the way.
Yeah.
And I wrote a business plan. I was working in a cocktail bar over there in the States, and during the day it was dead, and at night it was crazy. So during the day I remember I had this pad, it was yellow pages, and I wrote my whole business plan with a pen and paper. Imagine now. So that was my Google Doc, but it was pre-Google, it was pre most things. So I amended the idea of kind of an online magazine to actually have it as a place where there would be customized information, and not only that, but it would be customized to your college and then to your county and then your province. So it was database driven website. But not only that, the only way to save documents at the time really was a floppy disk, or to send it to yourself on an email. But the main email provider was Hotmail. They had 2 megabytes of space. A floppy disk had 1.4 megabytes, MBs of space. You wouldn't get a decent Excel onto it. But so what we did was we found a supplier in Hong Kong of a server supplier, so they had space to sell, and we bought the space in Hong Kong. We connected to there and we branded it up as a My Locker, which was an online space. We had a website called campus.ie, and then the locker was where you loaded your documents up. Now it would be called cloud computing, and wasn't for a long time after that. And in fact, Gmail was only invented a couple of years later. So the interesting thing is that, look, it was like a Venn diagram of Facebook and Gmail, and we were in the middle in the year 1999. So had we known, where things would go, but also if had there been the internet, ironically, if we, and we had exposure to VC, to capital, to the, Silicon Valley, and all of the information that you have now, and the ability to connect with people and sell your idea to the world. We were very successful in Ireland, but Ireland's a very small place. So what happened was we were very successful within that space. We had 60,000 users in the third level sector in Ireland, and we were able to sell them things. So advertising was our kind of revenue. But we actually customized the messages based on your gender and your location. Also, when you logged in, there'd be a message over here with male Adidas fragrances, and on the right would be female Rimmel Cosmetics, both owned by the same company, Coty, who were a great supporter of ours in the early days. They had a visionary leader called Sarah, who said, "We're going to back you. We're going to go for this because this is groundbreaking," and it was. But not enough brands recognised that, and so we had to go back out into the offline world, and so we connected the offline with the online. So we would do promotions on the campuses and then on the streets, and connected with maybe a voucher that could be redeemed online or vice versa. And so it started all this online offline relationship marketing. And what happened was we got very good at it. A number of clients like Heineken picked us up, and we were working with them. Then we developed mobile technology where you could text. This was like pre-short codes now, where you would text 085 191 0236 and message. We wrote code. We had a load of servers with 6210 iPhones plugged into them, which had a cord that would send the message in. The program would read it and say, yeah, that keyword, I must respond with this message. This was groundbreaking stuff. So we started doing that a lot offline at concerts, where messages were projected up onto the big screens beside the stage and all this stuff. So then we really became a mainstream marketing company with technology as our core strength. So we rebranded as Ground Marketing. So that was it's the same company, Campus, that evolved into Ground Marketing. So we bundle all that into one.
Can I go back a step? Did you start up the business with somebody else, or did you start it on your own?
Actually, it was obviously I wrote the business plan myself, and then I fortuitously met up with an old friend of mine, Owen O'Shea, who was a chartered accountant working with Deloitte at the time, and I met him for a few pints and told him, this is the idea. Will you give us a dig out? And by the end of it, he says, I'm in. And we went on that journey together. And my sister joined me when she left college in NUIG, and three of us went on our way. And that was that until we built it up to about 25 people. Sold the business then eventually. So Ground Marketing.
And so the other question I had was the notion that companies like Campus, that its main asset is the database, right? It's kind of standard now. Did you see that at the time? We
did, in that that's exactly what we sold to Enterprise Ireland. Actually, I failed to say it came on board very early, which it's a testament to them that in 1999, early 2000, they took a punt on a company with no assets, in terms of we had a couple of computers that we owned ourselves. We weren't even in the company. I think we had €70 worth of desks, 7 desks that we bought at €10 each from the basement of Deloitte because Owen had spotted them being dragged out.
For anyone watching, this is what's known as bootstrapping.
That's bootstrapping, yeah. Seven dirty desks. So it's, I think that, yeah, our assets were probably €70, and we raised £120 at a valuation of 1.2 million equity and 30,000 in a loan, in a preferred loan. So it was basically a 1.5 valuation and £150 injection into the business that had basically no assets, only, you know, a technology concept, a concept of where things would go. So it was a real, I suppose, as I say, a testament to Enterprise Ireland for taking a punt on that. And look, they've continued to do that through the years.
And so it was Owen, Elaine, and yourself built the business. That was the kind of the management team at that stage, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of moved from campus to ground marketing.
Yeah.
And then you sold it on.
Yeah, so I suppose a lot of things have their sell by date, and energy also has its sell by date. And you know, we did so much of invention in the early days, and then let's say everything caught up at the world, as in text messaging, promotions became the standard, you know, web-based marketing, targeting, all of that became more standard. So, you know, we were doing well, working away, but then, you know, almost year in, year out, you're winning new clients, and there's new energy and zest around that. But I guess also later in the career, in terms of the branding, marketing, and advertising agency business, you start going for bigger pitches, and then you go for more of them, and they're more expensive. So the more you get, you know, great stuff, the more you lose. They're massive whacks. It's a very strange business now, where you have to pitch and you're expected to pitch for free, and you might put on it, and like in the closing days, you know, we were putting 30, 40, 50,000 euro investment into a pitch that could have been worth £1 million on the upside, but turnover, so margins are quite tight. So it's not as glamorous as it may seem. And then as that goes on, you get a sense that unless this independent business, which we were completely, aligns itself in some way to the big players, they're going to come in, they're going to keep coming in and eating your lunch, but you've paid for your lunch already. Like you're pitching, and then they just come in and take it. So whilst we were growing 25-30% year on year, it just felt like that was the time to align with somebody or get in with somebody. So we made that decision, and there was a couple of suitors out there. We'd always had a few people knocking on the door, but that's when we decided we'll actually take action and move in with somebody, and basically sell to somebody. But when it's a service-based business, you have to sell and earn your way out, because you are the business.
And did the three of you go in to have us?
No, Owen walked away at that stage, because Owen was a chartered accountant and a solicitor and tax qualified, and went on to be a barrister. Barrister, not solicitor, and went on to practice as a barrister. And so it was unfair to time when, you know, a lot of the functions, finance and legal, were already in the larger organisation that bought us.
Padraig, what did you learn from that first entrepreneurial experience? What was kind of, you know, because people watching kind of want to know kind of some key messages, some key nuggets that you learned from, because that's your first big one, and you know, there would have been a lot of mistakes made. Well, there's mistakes made in every one, right?
Yeah.
But what were the takeaways for you from that one?
Oh, I suppose just the frenetic nature of a startup. Like, it's at the speed of light. You're biting off more than you can chew, and they're handing you more to chew, and you're doing things that you'd have no idea what you're doing, but you're doing it, and you're coming out the far end. And I know that fail faster and all of that, but I'd be like, not so much. It'd be more like succeed faster, you know. Just do more and do it fast, and learn, gobble everything up. One of the main things I would say is, and I've always said this, like, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, and because you can't be everything to everybody, or you'll be nothing to anybody. So I would have always said that. Great techies, great accountants, great lawyers, like all of the important. There's a reason why those people are in the in the areas they're in, as opposed to being the entrepreneur. And they can be entrepreneurial in their spirit, and they can be an entrepreneur. They can own their own accounting practice or whatever. But in your business, have the best people around you, and they can be consultants. They can be friends who have that skill set, and they have to be in the early days, because it's unlikely that you can afford them. And maybe there's an equity piece to be done with them as well, sweat equity. But it's speed. It's turn on a penny. So you have your lighthouse destination. You can see it. You know that's where you want to get to, but the how you get there, don't be stuck and on a rigid path. It's like Google Maps rerouting. Rerouting. You're going to keep rerouting and rerouting, and you'll eventually get your destination. It may be faster, maybe slower than it had initially you'd initially anticipated, but you'll get there. Well, you'll get there if you're just absolutely bullheaded, and you can break through walls. Like, you have to have the resolve. You have to say, I am just going to go until this happens, and that means no income. Like I remember as founders, we took no income in the first 3 years of our business. So that's 3 years we had to fund ourselves through credit cards, car loans with no cars, you name it.
And this is when your peers were going out clubbing and living, because they're earning for
the first time in lovely jobs, and not taking the holidays and all of that. And it's a unique place. I won't use words like lonely and all that. I certainly had a team then, and it was so exciting. But we employed a number of people before we employed ourselves.
Like, in terms of self-confidence, right, you must have taken a couple of hits along the way. So how did you deal with that? How did you, like, those times when you thought, oh my God, am I doing the right thing? Am I the right person to lead the organization? How did you, kind of retain or overcome those moments of doubt, which I presume you had somewhere along the way?
No, absolutely. And you wouldn't be human if you didn't. You've got to keep resetting, reprogramming yourself to believe what you, in your heart, you actually believe. You believe it. But the world will tell you lots of times that that's not right. That's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. I read a lot of management books, self-help style management books. Read stories about successful entrepreneurs. Read about their ups and their downs. Also, just look yourself in the mirror and say, you do believe this. You can do this. And you got to talk to yourself a lot, but talk positively to yourself, because it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if you start to believe that negative stuff, you're gonna, like, how many hundreds of millions of thoughts we have, if they're predominantly negative, you will fail. If they're predominantly positive, you have a much better chance. And so it's about reinforcing through watching stuff, reading stuff, and hearing other people's stories, and looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, you know that you can do this. This is your thing. You will do this. And then blowing off steam. Like live comedy is something I just love to go. It just changes everything in your body. So that's a bit of a reset and a reprogram. Having a few drinks, going to festivals, whatever it is, and whatever it is for yourself. It could be long runs, cycles, swims, whatever. And that'll change over the course of your life, obviously. But it's that little reset button. And it might be, if you've worked 30 days straight, it might be a day off. It might be a day's sleep, whatever. But it's something to reset, and then and keep reinforcing.
So you got bought out by Havas, right? And then you spent some time working with them. Okay, so I kind of want to jump forward a bit to the next startup, because you spent a bit of time in the corporate world, and then the next startup for you was?
So I did my earn-out with Havas, and then went in as the managing director of that group, which was kind of my first real job, if you will. I was officially on the payroll of somebody else, and a company I didn't own. So it might not have been the ideal place for me. It went fine. It went grand. It was after the recession. Any performance in the positive sense, any good performance was a great performance. So we did fine, but it didn't set my world on fire. And I suppose I had so many years of setting my own world on fire, and loving every minute of every day that I worked. I probably was looking for that again. Some buddies of mine were putting together a craft brewery in Sligo, and I worked for Heineken for years, my agency, and we'd worked on a lot of their world brands, like their Belgian beers, their Polish beers, their Italian beers, and German Weiss beers and stuff. And I loved that whole world. I love flavoursome beers from around the world and that. So then naturally craft was going to make its way. It was a big movement in the States for 30 years. It was going to make its way to this part of the world. It did, and I saw the opportunity there, and I loved my beer anyway, but particularly crafty stuff and world beers. So I said, yeah, I'll get involved. We all put a few quid in, so it was going to be a serious operation from the start. It wasn't a fella in a shed with a bucket hoping for the best. We built quite a large facility from the get-go, built.
This is White Hag.
Yeah, so it's the White Hag Irish craft brewery in Sligo, in Ballymote in Sligo. So we built the facility out. We hired straight away. We hired an American brewer, then a second American brewer, because our styles were going to reflect that big movement from the States, which is big, bold, beautiful beers, I suppose, which is kind of what our statement at the start, but through the lens of the west of Ireland. So local produce where we can, including right up to we got heather from the banks of Ben Bulben and created a beer called a Groot, which is a beer without hops, which is an ancient beer, and you ferment it using heather. So we harvest it from Ben Bulben, the heather tips, they go in the beer. But funny story there, actually, it tasted great. Well, it tasted like it tasted because it's a sourish beer, and it tastes like it's supposed to taste, but it wouldn't be everybody's cup of tea. That was grand. But then after a period of time, we started to get word from people that their bottles were exploding. So it turns out there's another naturally occurring. So it's made with yeast, as beer is, but there's a naturally occurring wild yeast in the heather that we hadn't identified, and it was going bananas after a period of time. So we looked at it, examined it, and our brewer tamed it, which he was able to see when does it go crazy and actually explode a bottle and why. And then we tamed it and actually created a culture which is now used in our whole sour beer range. So we propagated that yeast. We took that magic, and yeast is magic, but normally you're buying a very controlled yeast that's been proven and tested and proven for years, and it's got a name, which is a series of digits in that. But we found our own, created this culture and propagated it to now. It's the standard yeast for a range of sour beers, which are a very popular range of our products. Sour beer is a genre that a lot of people enjoy in the craft world. So we have a whole range of beers under the name Puka, which is.
How many beers do you have?
Oh God, we have launched 75 beers in 7 years. At any moment in time, you'd have about probably 25 available. So you change them. So I always say, innovation is our marketing budget. So you do something really mad or different or interesting or beautiful, and it spreads. It goes viral. I would say viral in the sense that people want it, and then they buy it. And then if they really, really want it a lot, it might become something you bring out regularly. And then if they really, really love it, it might become a core beer. So we'd have a core beer range that's always available, and then some outliers that are seasonal.
How much of your sales are in Ireland? How much abroad?
Yeah, it's about 70-30 domestic and export. Okay. So the White Hag was the 23rd entrant into the craft beer market 7 years ago, and there are now about 125 brands. I think something like 75 breweries. So some breweries make for other people. So that's why there's more brands than breweries. But we would also, the White Hag's probably in the top six or seven breweries in terms of volume and exports, and this is according to the last Board BA report. So it's not just singing the praise. It's so there are a few breweries that have, I suppose, kind of mastered the export thing, which is very, very difficult in many ways. Craft is about local, so the downside to that is that if people are dedicated to their local, your opportunities in export might be not as strong.
Where are
as
you selling to? No.
Yeah, so the UK is a big market. The Italy, France, the Netherlands, a couple of the Nordic countries. Yeah, so it's a good distributor is the answer to why these countries and why you have success. And they'll only choose the best from that country as well. So it's a really difficult space because you have to fit the profile that they're looking for, which is just a really good beer with a lot of innovation and consistency. So consistency in craft can be a very difficult thing to achieve because you got to put out the same can time after time after time. It used to be bottles, we've moved to cans. We also developed a barrel aging program, which was very interesting. So we actually crowdfunded for the barrels. So punters, customers actually bought barrels while they leased them for 3 years, and we made beer in their barrels. We created the bottles of beer, sent them out to them as their reward. So they actually, say if they bought a barrel for €250, they end up getting like €600 worth of beer over a 3-year period. So we just got, it was like a Kickstarter, but a private Kickstarter. So that was very cool.
And how did you decide which markets to export to? How did you pick those markets?
A lot of it's to do with festival. It's a very small community internationally, even.
Yeah.
So you'll have the top dozen breweries or so in every country, and then a festival will happen in that country, and then the top brewers from that country will be at the festival, and they'll invite a couple from other countries that have a tradition of craft brewing, and we were often on that list because of the beer speaks for itself. Then the distributors in that country attend that event and they taste the beer and they talk to the guys and they say, yeah, we can work with you, and get us some samples, pricing and materials, and away we go, see if it sticks. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, for many reasons. Very localized reasons. It just doesn't work, taste profile or format or price, lots of different reasons.
And again, what did you learn in that industry that was different from your previous industry? Because they're very different industries, obviously. I
guess one thing that really stands out is the power of the big guys. So the David versus Goliath stories, where no matter how good your product is, and it's damn good, no matter how good your product is, it has to be on that counter to sell, because if it's not in the pub, well, it can be in off licenses, and you can be quite successful in off licenses because they're generally independently owned and they're consumer driven. So consumer comes into an off license, asks for, do you have the white hag? No. All right, not to worry, I'll go somewhere else and I'll get the white hag. What was that one they said, the white hag?
Yeah.
Oh, let's get the white hag in. In the on trade, in the pubs, it's the big players coming into the pub saying, none of that craft in here now. We've our own craft beer coming. Now, so you need an awning and you need your beer garden done up. Grand. There's some beer or there's some kegs or whatever, and your beer garden will be done up, and there'll be no more craft in this bar. And that's the unfortunate reality of that you only learn when you think you're a dreamer and you're like, we have the best product, and it's going to be in all the great bars, but a lot of the great bars are under the cosh.
So how many bars can you, what percentage of bars can you actually?
It's a small percentage, but that's still a very you can make a living from if you're in enough of the independently owned bars. And then you might get a chain who says to you, it's so good, we'll break the rule and we'll go with you, whatever. So, but it's a slog. But if you imagine 125 Irish craft beer brands trying to vie for that 1 or 2 craft beer allocated taps in a bar, and then the big guys come in and say, actually take them away, will you? Because we've our own craft called, I won't start naming names, but it's not craft, obviously, because it's made.
And would you ever think of opening craft bars
it's a different
that have been it's been done?
It is a different business model. The Galway Bay Brewing Company are the leaders in Ireland in that space, and they've been great to other breweries as well by taking our beer in on their taps and keeping the big guys out. And that model works. and the Porterhouse and people like that, and obviously then Brewdog, for example, and the Scottish brand, they do both. So they've got mass distribution first, and then they open some of their own. They're kind of like showcase bars and hotels and stuff like that. So would we consider it? Yeah, you would. But it's a different business. So we're going to stick to the brewing, I think, at least for now.
Yeah.
So our plan is, the White Hag's plan is scale. So there's a whole new there's a new round of investment happening right now into the business, and when you've got it, ticking, humming the way it's humming at the moment, we know which beers work, we know margins, that kind of stuff that takes a long time to get right, and that's right now. So you can scale that. So repeat.
So then, like, you've got this kind of humming,
yeah,
right? And you decide to take another business startup and go again with another. Like, I know you're still involved with White Hag, right?
Yeah.
But you've decided to start yet another business, and that's Snack Farm.
Yeah.
Like, again, very different industry. Like, where did this come from?
So yeah, I guess with the White Hag, there's a number of founders and a number of shareholders, and also, one of the lessons in business, I think, is to also know your strengths, and know other people's strengths. And I talked about that. Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. With the White Hag, I'm a brand builder, and I got it to a point where the brand is robust. It's scalable. So the way we have the cans designed, the stories, our whole heritage mythology. It's Irish mythology from the northwest of Ireland, so everything is deeply rooted in the area, but it's very scalable. So we've stories created and ready to go on new products and new lines and all that. And I suppose after that, the business was set up, it's running. So you've got to say, well, where do we need to put the attention? And sales obviously is one, working with good distributors, running the business. Now we've 2 chartered accountants in the business on the ownership team, so I definitely won't be getting involved there, because they're definitely smarter than me, and we have a marketing commercial guy as well on our ownership team. So and they all live around in Sligo, and they all live around the brewery. So I made the decision to step away then and leave it there as a strategic investment for the future, and to look to my next venture. And in doing so, my wife is South African, and we actually moved to South Africa for a period of time, and I was still working on the White Hag, remote working before it was remote working.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, well, when we're coming back to Ireland, and what is this next macro trend that we can own a piece of, which is the micro trend within the macro. And I suppose in the southern hemisphere in general, but I think in South Africa, we were walking around the shops and the supermarket, and you're going, it's very natural to eat natural, and it's very natural to snack natural, which is, they have aisles and aisles dedicated to nuts, seeds, fruits, pulses, oats, everything in different formats, from baked to raw to seasoned to flavored with and the chocolates and the best of ingredients. Like, it's amazing. And then you're like, it's not there yet on this side of the world, and Ireland, UK, Europe, but conversely, snacking is going through the roof in the likes of Germany, UK, 500% growth in 5 years. Missing meals was the biggest trend in food. It was the biggest global trend in food, missing your traditional meals. And it makes sense, because the lives that we're all living now. So we landed on an idea to come up with a snacking brand that's all natural, but that tastes great. So we had this. I'm a big fan of a Venn diagram, and we had this Venn diagram where we had it was snacks that are good for you but don't taste great, and snacks that taste great are not good for you, and then snacks that taste great and are good for you. And there was very, very little in the third. So good for you was the bit in the middle, yeah. But there was very little in the taste great and are actually good for you. So that's what we set out to do, and our kind of original mission was to make it a little bit easier for everybody to eat a little bit easier every day. We since changed our sort of mission to fuel your potential. So our mission in life as a brand now is to fuel your potential, and the idea behind that is that what you put into your body you get out. but it's not always easy to put in the good stuff. But if it's made easier by the right format, the right mixture. So all our snacks, we went for the trail mix, or we call it a modern trail mix, because trail mixes can be quite seen as old-fashioned and just for trailing, just for walking and cycling and stuff. But we want to bring that to the masses. So we effectively deconstructed a bar, because the bar market is enormous. We wanted to stand out and disrupt, and the way we did that was we actually deconstructed the bar and created modern trail mixes. So there's nuts and seeds and pulses and little chocolate drops, cheeky chocolate drops in there. Things like pineapple and banana chips and coconut, roasted coconut, and all this really interesting edamame beans, different ways. But when all they're put together, they taste amazing. And then we engineered them in such a way, and say engineer, naturally put them together in such a way that they're the perfect balance of protein, fiber and natural energy that you need to get you through your day. So we currently five flavor combinations, but we are about to launch a range of baked snacks, so we want to cover all the occasions now. So the one is for active and for working and for concentration. So everything we say from working to working out, and then the baked snacks are more your premium, indulgent kind of savoury snacks. So with your nice gin and tonic, or your glass of wine, or your sparkling water, whatever you're having yourself, but they go with your drink, so they can be sold in off license in hotel bar, and they're super premium in how they appear as well in the packaging. So they can be sold in a 5-star hotel, an off license, a bar, or in store. So
now, when you were talking about the big players, been dominating the beer market, right? In the food market, particularly snack food, right?
Yeah.
It's even tougher, right? And getting merchandising space has got to be really difficult. And how do you, it's hugely competitive market. So how do you distinguish yourself from everything that's available, and how do you elbow into that space to get enough room for merchandising?
Yeah, I said that was my observation. I didn't say I learned from it. That the big guys will come and crush you. So what we decided to do was disrupt. So instead of going into retail first and then having an online store or being available here and there after the retail, we did it backwards. So we actually entered all the big tech companies first of all, because that curve with the early adopters. If you can capture those early adopters, you end up getting the rest of the curve filled over time. So we went in only into we were in Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, HubSpot, Citrix, Wix, all the tech companies in Dublin, and they're all the European headquarters. So the idea was we go into all of them first and penetrate that way. And then those people will become the early adopters. Then we'll have a direct consumer model online. So then out of work, they can go online and buy it, and they're all very high users of e-commerce. So that would naturally happen. And then eventually go into retail. So absolutely going grand on that journey in all the offices until Leo Varadkar announced for COVID. We'll be closing all the offices, and that was effectively the end of our business for about a day. And that was one of those moments when when you asked me earlier, you say to yourself, have I made the right decision here, and am I the right person, or whatever else. That's where we were like, is this the right strategy? We knew we had the right product and brand, definitely, but was it the right strategy? Because in one foul swoop it's come crashing down. So we took a day, just stared at the stock, stared at each other, and it's myself and my wife, by the way, it's that own the business. So it's everything. That's it. That's us. That's all our money. That's everything. Our energy. So we decided, right, we'll move forward quickly with the direct consumer model. We'll hurry that up, which was to come, say, a year down the line or 6 months down the line. We had it up in 2 or 3 days. Shopify site, and then just had to reach down the back of the sofa, gather up all the change, and start buying ads. Getting our SEO right, getting Google reviews, buying ads, learning everything there is to know about Shopify and metrics, acquisition costs, churn rates, returning customer rates, margins. Get it all in about 48 hours, and get it all firing on all cylinders. And I suppose we went through a journey, went on a journey, and there was that whole, I suppose, empathy towards businesses during COVID as well, that, they're working hard and they're local and we'll support them. And Virgin Media actually were good enough to to give free airtime on TV, and we applied for that and we got it, and that was a real turning point where we got loads of customers from the ads. We had ads on TV, and in the middle of COVID, with it only online, so people flocked there, bought the product. Average spend online is quite high, but it's very expensive to get your customers, and that TV was an exception in that it was given to us, and then after that we were able to build upon that, because retargeting and word of mouth very important, and then reviews and all that kind of stuff.
Great example of what we know to talk about pivoting and look, we need to kind of wrap up, but a couple of kind of questions, just two questions to finish on. One is, the common denominator across your businesses is high quality product, right? That's kind of been consistent. Why has that been so important to you?
I guess I feel the quality resonates. I think it's quality. You have to have quality, like quality in your customer service, quality of product, and quality team, and all the like. I don't feel like I'd be somebody who'd rather buy, one good coat for a lot of money and have it last 5 years than buy a new coat every year. I like quality. I think quality resonates with people, and long term your brand value is going to be much higher, whether that's when you bring out a new product, people trust you. Trust is probably the most important factor. Well, taste is the immediate one in food, but trust for your brand. From a brand perspective, trust is the most important. And with that in mind, like when we actually we ended up chatting to Rob Kearney about the business, because he had tasted our products a number of times and he felt it matched his lifestyle and his own persona that he's built up over the years. And as he's leaving professional rugby, he's investing in a few startups, and we ended up doing a deal with Rob where he invested his own cash into the business in the middle of COVID as well. And watch this space, he's really come on full time as director of well-being is the position that he's taken in the business now. So in employee engagement into the big companies, because they're coming back, and also we're servicing them remotely, stuff like that. So if it wasn't for the quality, if we just had snacks and tasty healthy snacks that weren't of very high quality, you wouldn't attract the likes of Rob to invest in the business, and it will be the likes of him. His involvement will propel us forward, because we are finally also looking at the retail journey, so kicking off early next year into retail.
To finish on, young people watching, right, gone from being the student to serial entrepreneur, 3 things that you've learned from the journey, 3 nuggets of advice, 3 key messages, 3 key tips, whatever way you want to describe it, 3 things that you'd share with them.
Yeah, I think probably I've referred to some of it already. So surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you are within the areas that you are not as strong. Bolster that and bolster it early. The second thing is to try to get to an MVP, which is a minimal viable product, first, as early as you can. Get an MVP going, and you won't, like, perfection is the enemy of progress, I think is the phrase, but you just do it first and get it, and then show it to as many people as possible. Your consumers, the buyers, the users, people who've tried it before and failed. Talk to everybody as quick as you can, because you can sit in your own room and in your own office and go through stuff for ages and say, I'm still on the journey, it's going to be great, and then you release it into the world and it's not great. So that's 2, and then it's the obvious one is just be ready for, like, traveling at the speed of light. Be ready. And if you're not ready, there are certain people who just they like savings, they like to settle life, they like a nice and that's most people. I'm not saying that this is the way to go. If it's not for you, don't do it. Like if you have a weak stomach, don't do it. You're going to be traveling at the speed of light, and there's going to be a lot of bumps along the way. So prepare yourself. Watch your mental health. You know, do a lot of that talking to yourself and talking to other people about the issues that you're facing, because you will face issues. Don't hide them and say, oh Jesus, I shouldn't have, I shouldn't have done that. Like, let it out. Talk to the world and say, what do you think of this? You know,
it's been a hell of a journey. It's a life that you've lived to the fullest, right? And you wouldn't change it.
Not a bit.
And
no.
We wish you continued success.
Thank you.
And we'll be following you on your on the everlasting journey, or the ever continuing journey.
Cheers.
Padraig, it's been a pleasure talking
thank
to
you. And I want to say thank you because you talked about things that did form the nurture nature part. Certainly attending your class, it did change the way that I thought about the opportunities that are out there for that entrepreneur life. It is an option. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Cheers.
Thank you.